Annie would be a fun one too. What was that? Were you starting to ask something? No? Come on, don't be shy. We got some questions. Yes?
Do you know when season 2 is going to come out?
I have no idea. The question was, do I know when season 2 is coming out? And I have no idea. At this point it's just a rumor. There's nothing confirmed, but I think it's pretty obvious there's going to have to be a second season. They have to continue it. They can't leave it where they did.
Oh no.
Yes?
Who's your OTP?
Who knows? Let's see. I don't know. Who would be his one true? What do you want me to say, Aaron? Is that what you want me to say?
Aaron is my one true love. We've been together forever, since childhood.
I'm using the kid Armin voice too for this. He knew early on. Yes.
Did it take many takes to do the scream in one of the episodes?
Yeah. Okay, you talk about the screaming at 5. Yeah, that took us about 3 or 4 takes, and I kept saying, I want to do it again. I don't think it's good enough yet. And like when I got to the point where I sounding hoarse, he was like, "We got it, dude. Chill. It sounds great." So yeah, it was kind of nerve-wracking recording that as well, because I was like, I want to get it right. I want to get it perfect. So yes.
How did you get the role of Armin?
I auditioned.
Makes so much sense.
I know, it's crazy, isn't it? It's so simple yet complex. I guess to just kind of add to that, I'd been a fan of the show, watching it. When I was first told about the show, I hadn't heard anything about it. My roommate, who at the time was working for Funimation, she was one of the she was the head of convention management for Funimation. She went to a lot of cons. You may have met her if you've been to some of the bigger shows that Funny was at. Her name was Sarah Sullivan, or Sully. Really, really sweet woman. She told me about it initially. She was like, have you seen or heard of Attack on Titan? I was like, no. I was like, you really should check it out. And initially, and then she just left. She didn't like tell me anything about it, anything like that. So I just kind of let my imagination run. I thought, Attack on Titan. Man, maybe it's like attack on one of the moons of Saturn. Like, maybe this is going to be like some sort of big epic space battle adventure. Like a big sci-fi adventure. That'll be awesome. This sounds great. Not at all what I thought. And it ended up being a lot cooler and a lot more badass than I thought it would be. What else? So I had come into the show actually around episode 4, I think, was when they had aired up to that point on Hulu, or the simulcasting had been up to that point. So I watched 4 episodes in a row and just waited every week, chomping at the bit, like, give me more. And when episode 10 hit, and Armin has his big moment there, that's when I really fell for that character in terms of an actor and as a fan, because that entire arc, everything that he had gone through mentally and personally up till that point was just really cool to watch how he started to grow and his form of bravery. And yeah, at that point I decided I want to play that character if I can. And so when auditions came around, they called me up to the studio and for the audition. So of course for like 2 to 3 days was just sweating buckets, like please let me get it, please let me get it, please let me get it. And I went in and I read for Armin first because he was the one that I really wanted in, the one that I felt like I had the best chance at getting. And then I also read for Aaron and Connie and Levi. And then I heard nothing for a week and a half. And so it finally got to the point where I was like, oh, I guess I didn't get anything. Oh well, that's fine. And then my agent calls me and says, hey, we need to book you for 9 hours on Attack on Titan. I was like, awesome! I don't know what I got. They wouldn't tell me the character. All they said was, we just need you for 9 hours. And so I'm sitting there thinking, what character would require 9 hours of recording at the very least? I don't know. Like maybe Connie, maybe Levi, I don't know. And it seemed, and I finally get to the studio, I'm just waiting. And Mike McFarlane, the director, who also plays Jean Kirstein, came out. I was just sitting outside the studio, we were talking. I was talking with some friends of mine, and he came outside, and he was like, oh, hey, there you are. Have you heard yet? I was was like, no. I was like, what am I supposed to hear? And he said, okay, that's awesome, man. I'm glad to tell you, I'll be the first one to tell you you're playing Armin. And I was outside the studio. I swear they could hear me in the booths because I just started going nuts outside. Yes! Screaming and just going crazy. So yeah, it was a cool, really awesome moment. And you had a question here a second ago.
No, I forgot.
No, you forgot? All right, if you remember, just raise your hand. Yeah, you right there. And then you.
What were the voices you were thinking of doing for Aaron and Levi?
This was months ago. Let me see if I can remember it. I think Aaron was, the way that I was going for Aaron was just kind of like my normal voice, kind of like what I use for, like Kenichi, if you've ever seen Kenichi, or the Wallflower. So, so kind of like a Kyohei or Kenichi type sound, nothing as high-pitched or as young sounding as Armin. And, for Levi, everything's kind of it might be a little much, but I thought, you know, he was definitely a character, not the type of character that I get to play very often, and so it was just fun to be able to kind of stretch my legs a bit, or stretch my vocal legs, if you will, and get to throw that out there. But yeah, I'm really, really glad that I got Armin. I don't think I could have done Levi half as well as Matthew Mercer ended up doing him. He sounds so good. And there was the question. Up there, and like you.
He stole my question.
Oh, he stole your question. Okay, gotcha.
Who's
Yeah.
your least favorite character?
Least favorite character? I love that. Everybody just went. Let's see. Least favorite. When the show first started, my least favorite was Jean, and I think a lot of people. And I think a lot of people have had, like, I've had this conversation with some people before where a lot of people also said, yeah, they didn't really necessarily like Jean at the start. And I think a lot of the reason for that is because Jean, at the very beginning of the show, when you first really get to know him, he's in it for himself. He's in it, you know, for survival and to be able to try to secure a life of leisure for himself. Which I think deep down is what everybody would want to try to do in that situation. If you lived in that world, if we all lived in the Attack on Titan world, if you had to go into the military, I'm pretty sure you would want to join the military police. So I think a lot of people initially did not like him because he's kind of reflects what a lot of people, I think that they would do if they were in that situation, and they don't necessarily like that. They don't necessarily like that about themselves. But it's a survival thing. That's something that we all have ingrained in us, is this desire to be able to protect ourselves and protect the things that we hold dear. And if you don't necessarily have family, or in Aaron's case, an agenda, revenge, I think that that's something that a lot of people would do, or how they would think, which makes him that much more cooler later on when he starts to change, and when you see him grapple with those fears, these real fears that all the characters really have to fight through. But he's the one that really sacrifices the most in terms of what he wants, and well, like he had it in his grasp, the ability to have the life of leisure that he wanted. And that could be a spoiler, so I'm not going to say the rest.
Yes, Armin. It's me. What's your question, me?
Can you do the Armin scream?
Since it's the last day. Do I? Yes, I will do it since it's the last day, but I'm putting the microphone over here. So we're doing the scream from F5. All right? This is why I really wish I had some water.
We have to see this.
I've done that in maybe two or three cons since that aired. And never, not even this time, have I ever actually gotten close to what I did in the booth. It's I don't know what it is. I guess I don't know if my voice is not warmed up, or if it's I don't know. I think I'm also just scared to wreck my voice before the rest of the day. I was like, I've got 3 more panels to do.
It was still beautiful.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Would it be possible if you did Armin's speech?
Armin's speech? The F10 speech? If I can remember all of it. Yeah, I'll totally do that. All right. Ah, salute. Everybody get there. Come on, I need your help here. The salute here. All right. From F10. Yeah, there you go. If you want to stand up, that's fine too. Actually, cool. We'll do that too because I'm after help.
Oh god, I'm gonna stand up. Oh my god. I feel so much better.
Okay. I am a soldier, and I have dedicated my heart to the restoration of humanity, sir. Nothing could make me prouder than dying for such a noble cause. If we use his Titan ability, I believe we can do this. We can retake this city for humanity's glory. And with what little time I have left to live, I will advocate his strategic value. Yeah. I'll get down here. Okay. We're done. The panel's over. Thank you for coming. All right, do we have any other questions? Yes. Hunting. Yes.
So, your Armin voice, did it take you long to like find the perfect one, or did you just use that from the beginning?
In terms of finding the voice, when I first started it, it was very close to what it is now. It had that higher pitch range, and especially when we started off with the younger characters. And when we started off in the first couple of episodes when they were very young, we knew that eventually they were going to go up a bit. So we started finding the baseline of where we wanted them to sit after the little age jump. And but beforehand, what was really hard was getting the attitude and that kind of lack of confidence that he has from the very get-go. And so a lot of that had to do with getting the breath out as well, because there's supposed to be that, it just kind of adds to it. And so that was the hardest part for me, was consistently making sure that at almost all times he was lacking in confidence in everything he did and everything he said. And that was really, I have to give all the credit to Mike McFarlane for that, because he really pushed me in a lot of different ways, actually, as an actor. Armin's voice and how it ended up being, and his the performance overall is easily, I think, some of the best work that I've ever done as a voice actor in the 10 years that I've been doing this. And I owe a lot of that to Mike McFarlane for pushing me, and like he really knew what he wanted Armin to sound like. So yes.
What was your first thought when you were
It's there. It's in there. It's right there. It gets stuck. I understand that. I have ADD.
Anyway, so what was your thought when you were reading about the story of these people living in these walls, and you have these giant people eating little people?
Well, the first time I'd ever seen anything to do with the show, it wasn't reading it or anything. It was actually watching the first episode, and so my reaction was, I think, what a lot of people's reaction was, which the start was, "This looks so pretty. This is a great show. Like the animation is just beautiful." End of the episode. What is life? What is my existence? It was hardcore. Like, it's very rare that a show inspires real living terror in me, like really keeps me on the edge of my seat. And that was one of those shows. Like watching it for the first time through, once they set the tone after the first episode, every episode after that, there was always this feeling in my gut of dread of like, oh God, what's gonna happen? I'm just gonna get eaten. Because like, I don't know about you, being eaten alive, not necessarily a cool sounding thing. Doesn't sound like a fate I would like, especially if it's a giant naked person. I'd rather not get eaten by a giant naked person. Like maybe like a giant, beast of some kind. It was going to be over quick like that. I would not want to be eaten alive or whole or anything like that. That would just be no. Yes.
So I was in a panel with another voice actor, and she said there were a lot of times in the studio where she just started crying. Were there any times during Attack on Titan that you...
That I cried? In the booth, yeah, there was a few times. Armin, that actually was really cool for me because being able to get emotional and cry as an actor has always been something that I've struggled with in terms of performing. I don't know why. I guess it's just because I'm generally just a very happy person, and it's really hard for me to go there emotionally. But yeah, there were a few parts, especially, what was that one scene? Just before, when Armin decides that he's going to join Eren and go to, after the whole reclamation mission it happens, and he's crying and thinking about his grandpa. Yeah, that moment got me pretty good. So that was one moment where there were definitely some waterworks. In the back, way back. Yes. Huh?
What's your opinion on Levi?
He's super cool. Levi's a really fun character, and Matthew Mercer, I think, nobody could have played him in English like Matthew Mercer has. I think he's just got the perfect attitude and the perfect voice for that character. So, I mean, it's Leon from Resident Evil, and it's Chrom from Fire Emblem Awakening. So, I mean, kind of works. It's a little perfect there. Who has not asked a question yet? You in the back. Yes, you black shirt.
What caused you to get into voice acting?
I had been a huge fan of animation from the get-go, pretty much from childhood. I jokingly say, but it could be true, my first words in this world were DuckTales woohoo. Cartoons, and I got into acting when I was about 5. My mother put me into acting would be actually the best thing to say because she was tired of me reenacting all my favorite cartoon and movie scenes using her fine linen as costume pieces. So she put me into theater very, very early on, and I really fell in love with acting. And then there was one day, I don't know when it was, but it came to the realization watching a cartoon that, oh wait, these characters aren't real. That's a person giving them a voice. They're acting. I want to do that. That sounds awesome. And so that just kind of became an obsession. It's something that I really strived for. I constantly did voices throughout, all of my childhood, and really I still do voices just walking around the house. Like my roommate thinks I'm insane. I had become a fan of anime around the time that I was 9 or 10, when Pokemon hit and Digimon really became real big. And then my little bitty town in Texas finally got cable. And one of the only people I knew that had it was my grandma. And so every day after school, I would go over to my grandma's place. You were so awesome, thank you. I'd go over to my grandma's place, and I would watch Toonami. That was my first time to ever see Toonami. That's where I got to see Sailor Moon for the first time, Dragon Ball, and Rurouni Kenshin wasn't on there. Ronin Warriors, that's what I'm thinking of. And Tenchi Muyo and Gundam Wing and all those things. That's my childhood there. When the opportunity presented itself, a friend of mine that I had met through an anime fandom forum that I'd been a part of for a few years in high school, got the number for ADV Films, their Austin branch, and I never knew that 2 of the biggest anime dubbing companies were an hour and a half north of me and 3 hours south of me growing up. They were just right there. And so I had been training and really wanting to try and go into book on tape. I thought that would be a great way to get in and to really start with voice work, because I always really, really enjoyed the idea of being able to play around with an entire story's worth of characters and portray them by yourself just through voice and performance. But then that opportunity came up, and I ended up calling them. This was the first semester of my senior year of high school. I called the ADV Films once a month, for my entire semester. I called them once or twice a month. It's I really want to do this, please, please let me do this. And then in January of 2004, before I graduated, they called me down for my very first show called Wedding Peach, if anybody has heard of that. And it's I just did a little bit part thing. And I worked with them for free for about a year, just coming in and doing a whole bunch of little bit parts in anime, and my compensation was getting a free DVD. whenever it came out. And then about a year later, I ended up getting my very first role, and they liked me enough, they kept using me, and now it's 10 years later. So it's been a really interesting, incredible journey. You, over there.
What have some of your favorite roles been?
Armin's definitely one of them. Because he kind of represents one of the last big milestones that I set for myself in terms of what I wanted to do with this career. And now that I've got a show basically on Toonami, it's kind of like, where do I go from here? That was the extent of my ambition. Was I want a show on Toonami, that'd be cool. But altogether, I have 4 favorites, and they each represent a certain milestone. The very first one was a character called Taishi in Comic Party Revolution, and he was kind of my first big role that I ever got in an anime, and it was really fun because it was like playing a very heightened version of myself because he was just a giant fanboy. And then the next one was Kyohei from a show called The Wallflower. And that one was really cool for me because I was a huge Nabasheen fan. Who here has ever heard of, does anybody here know the shows Excel Saga, Puni Puni Poemi, or Narama Daikon Brothers, or anything like that? Not enough hands went up on that. You all have homework. Check out Excel Saga at the very least. It is a staple. It's a must. And also, one of my favorite directors for English dubs was Matt Greenfield, who directed the original dub for Neon Genesis Evangelion, also directed Excel Saga, and a whole bunch of really cool stuff. And it was a twofer. Being Kyohei, I got to be both in a Nabasheen show and get directed by Matt Greenfield at the same time. And the really cool thing that ended up with that character was when we premiered the show in, I think it was 2007, in a little con in Houston called OniCon. Nabasheen himself flew all the way from Japan and joined us for the weekend and got to watch the dub with us for the premiere. And we ended up going out to dinner with him that night. And he sat right across from me. And through a translator, we talked the entire evening. And near the end of the evening, he told me, even though he couldn't understand what was being said in the English, just from the way that he heard my performance and the way that everybody was reacting to at the right moments to the right jokes, when he heard my voice and my performance, he heard Kyohei. And it was just like, I just got knighted by Nabasheen. Suck it, haters! The next one was Kenichi, in Kenichi the Mind's Disciple. Because that was kind of the fanboy dream come true. It was my first big role working for Funimation that I was a huge fan of. They had so many shows on, Cartoon Network and on Toonami when I was a kid. That was where DBZ was. And all of my masters, all of Kenichi's masters in that show were played by big characters from Dragon Ball. My karate master was Piccolo, Vegeta, Yamcha, all those guys. Krillin was my Muay Thai instructor, and just this entire Dragon Ball cast was a part of it, and it was just so cool to get to play alongside them. Definitely a fanboy dream come true. And then, of course, Armin, for obvious reasons. So, yes, sir.
How did you feel? What was your reaction when you learned of the Titan's quote-unquote digestive system?
The question was, what was my reaction when I first heard or saw the Titan's digestive system, or how they digest? I thought it was disgusting. It's like they're like giant cats, basically. Then they just cough up stuff. Yeah.
Are you going to do the OVA versions, the little
the little chibi show thing. They released the episodes on the collector's edition. I'm not sure if they're on the regular edition DVDs, but they are already released. The little bird, but we did not dub them. Yeah, I had a sad face when I heard about that.
I haven't seen much of them. I'm still waiting for the rest of them.
Well, and I'm sure there's going to be more, and at some point we might. Once we have all of them, we might.
But I thought they might want to do the training course. That's fun.
Yeah, I would love to do any of those things, especially because I know that they have the little comic books in the of the Chibi Titan stories and of them in high school or whatever it is, and seeing Armin wearing the girl outfit at one point and with the little cat ears, I was like, I will totally play that. That was hysterical.
I just thought it looked best on me.
Yes.
Is it weird hearing your voice or your friend's voices when you're watching it?
The question was, is it weird hearing my voice or my friends' voices watching, the show? Watching it now, not really. When I first started, yes. It was really bizarre. Like, because when you first go in, when you first go into the booth, and you have this completely soundproofed environment that you're in, and you put those headphones on, and then you hear yourself in the microphone, it is one of the most creepy, just uncomfortable. You're like, oh God, that's what I sound like? Why am I here? It is really weird, and then it's kind of the same thing when you first hear it, like when you get the DVD or whatever, and you first hear yourself coming through TV speakers and stuff. Yeah, it's really weird because at that point your voice has been through a mixing process and all sorts of stuff has been like there's been levels done on it, and any of the weird noises that your mouth makes when that you record have been cleaned up, so it just sounds really crystal clear. And it's unnerving. It just doesn't sound natural at first, and so it takes a lot of getting used to. Like now, it's not really a big deal. Yeah.
What was your favorite episode?
Well, my favorite episode, 10. F10 is easily my favorite, and yeah, because it's where I fell in love with my character. Yes.
So if you could meet Armin's Japanese voice actor, what would you say?
It's and it's a she, isn't it? Yeah. I would say I hope I did get justice, even though I have testicles. So, yes.
For forcing me to bring this up, what did you think of Marco's dad?
Oh, spoilers! No, it's all good. Nobody heard that. Everyone forget what just happened. No, it's all good. No, it's all good. But just for the sake of, it's already been asked, why not? I was kind of surprised, but I'm not sure it's really him. To be honest with you, I have my suspicions on that. So I don't know. You. What will be in Dr. Yeager's basement? What do I think? I think really he's just making the first Jägermeister. Which makes sense to me. I mean, actually, wait a minute, wouldn't that be crazy? I think I just figured out who all the Titans are. I think they're Irish. They're coming after the boobs, that's all it is. Maybe they're just giant Irish, and that's why they act so. It's like they're just drunk. They don't even realize they're eating people. They're just like, it's like bar food to them. Man, that pretzel was really juicy. I have no idea what's in the basement, but I like that answer. So, there was a... Yes, you in the back.
Actually, she has a question.
Oh, okay.
When you go back after you voiced Armin and you go back and you watch the original sub series, do you ever just look at something that Armin has said and do you ever think to yourself like, man, I wish I had done that differently? Do you ever critique yourself?
Yeah, I mean, as an actor, that's kind of par for the course with any show that you do. Going back and listening to shows, especially if you listen to them like the moment they come out, they're still kind of fresh in your mind. It can be very disheartening sometimes, but like any artist in here, whether you're an actor, writer, or artist, and anything like that, you're always your own worst critic and your own worst enemy. So I mean, yeah, there's definitely a lot of things that in any show really that there's always one or two lines where I'll think, I could have done that better, or I wish I'd said it like this, or I wish the line itself had been this. But at the end of the day, you just kind of have to roll with it. Yes.
What's your first thought when you first were told them about Mikasa?
Say that one more time.
Like when you first watched it, what you first thought of her?
Oh, like when I first watched the show, what were my thoughts on Mikasa? Mikasa. She, I was like, that is one sweet chick. I do not want to ever mess with her. I like the very first scene with her. Like everything you need to know about Mikasa happens in the very first episode when the guys that are picking on Armin run away, not because Aaron's coming at them, but because Mikasa's coming at them. This is like, yeah, all right, she's awesome. Don't mess with her. And I enjoy the psychological aspect of her character, that she is just this mountain of strength, but she draws that strength at first solely from Aaron, and because she has it in her mind that she saved, he saved her, but she doesn't really necessarily think of him saving her as just a physical act of barging in and saving her from those dudes. She also thinks of it in terms of she taught him the life lesson that made her the person that she is today. And so that aspect of her I thought was really cool and very dark and would be really fun to play. And I really envy Trina in getting to play a character like that. You with the pink phone.
Is Mikasa's voice actor as fierce as she is?
She can be. Yeah. Trina's not someone that you really wanna screw with. That's for sure. Mostly because you will get an earful. And did you have a question?
Me?
Yeah. All right.
If you got thrown into Attack on Titan in that world, what would you do?
Run. There's nothing. Like, I will stay inside the walls. I will go to the interior as quickly as possible and dine on awesome food. I don't know. Maybe I'd go into the scouts. At some point, at least from the way the world is described, going into the military at the very least is kind of required of you, or at least expected of everybody. So I'm sure at some point I'd be kind of peer pressured into like, okay, I'll join the military, and then I don't know. We'll see. Do as good as I can to become a member of the military police. Maybe join the scouts. You never know.
Join the scouts. We have cookies.
Link.
What's it like voice acting the voice of reason of those three?
I love playing support characters. Like, being a support character actor is really cool, but also that's kind of the style that I take even in playing games. Like, if I'm playing online games, I love playing support characters or anything like that. Being the voice of reason, it's cool, it's pretty awesome, but at the same time, the really challenging part with Armin is the fact that for most of the series, and even after his big moment in F10, there's still a little bit of lack of confidence there. Nowhere near as much past F10. But before that, he was literally his own worst enemy. His entire view of himself was solely dependent on the things that he told himself mentally. Like, I'm not good enough. I have not earned the right to be able to call myself their equal. They are stronger and better than me. And all these things that are just not true. And that's one of the reasons why I love that scene specifically in F10. The visual of when Aaron tells him, hey, the reason I'm giving you this responsibility, the reason I'm asking you this question is because you always make a good call. You always make the best mental judgment and keep a good head and keep a cool head. The moment he tells him that, and we see that shot of the Titan corpse shatter behind him, that moment is so cool to me because at that moment, that's when his self-image also shatters with it.